Well, hello friends, and welcome back to browser hacking once again. Today we are going to make the BR element work, the line break element. I'm just get a build going here. And I guess we'll start by just making a little test page for it. So we're going to do a little page called br.html, and I can't type, but if I do it properly, then it would look like this. Hello world, BR. This is BR, a test page. I guess we'll make some, just one here, for the, maybe like that, BR element. BR. Does it work? Okay, how nice is that? Let's put a little title on that too. BR element test. Okay, and let's add that to a little welcome page so that I can easily click on it when we start the browser. And let's see what it would look like in Firefox. So here's what we would get, clickety click, and this is what we expect, right? Very typical BR element behavior. So let's see how it would behave with the browser as we have it right now. Because I don't have any BR element awareness, so yeah, pretty much what I expected. They just appear to be useless elements that produce nothing. So I guess probably actually what happens is that we have display inline as the default for, no, we don't, okay, well, because it's definitely not doing a block layout here, so let me just, oh, here, right. So when we create the layout node for an element, we check the display value, so we extract display from the style that applies to this element, and then if we find a value, then we use it, otherwise we default to inline, which we then handle by creating a layout inline, which is what you see here, so there's empty inlines. But we are going to turn these into line breaks instead. So what we need to do for this is first we'll need to create a special element for it. So let's make some files. I guess we'll add the DOM HTML BR element, and we'll also add a layout class for it, because the BR element is going to become its own DOM element, and then when we construct the layout tree for the BR element, then we're going to construct a special layout node. We'll call it layout break. And what that's going to do is that it's going to be an inline layout node that just inserts an empty line or a line break into the current blocks line box list, basically. So it just appends a new line break to the current blocks line boxes. But don't worry if you don't know what that means. You'll see when we go along here. So let's also edit the makefile so that we have this BR element and layout break. Okay, and then we can, oh, let me refresh my cube creator. There we go. And of course, nothing is actually going to happen yet, so we have to do something with this information. So let's go in the element factory, which is just a little file. I separated this out into a file earlier today. It's just where we create an element based on the tag name. So what we want to do here is we just want to check if the lowercase tag name is BR. Then we want to return a new HTML BR element. And we actually need to include it as well. And then we need to define it. So let's go in, well, let's just copy an existing one actually. Copy the blink element and remove the gunk we don't need. So BR element, like that. And then it's gonna need one special behavior, which is when we create a layout node for this one, we are gonna override create layout node. It takes a style resolver and a parent style. So we're going to override that, and instead of just letting the normal thing run, we're going to create a special layout node. So we'll do that down here. No, not const, document. I'll just have to write this out first. HTML element, document, tag name. Not the most interesting constructor. Okay, and then finally, ref cutter layout node. And then here we are just going to construct a new layout break, and we'll pass ourselves as the node that this layout break will have as its node. So let's go in layout break and actually define that class. So it's going to be a layout node. Oh, I forgot to say final here actually. HTML BR element is final. You can't subclass the BR element, so I'm just going to make it final. Just because it's nice. And this is going to be a public layout node. At least that's what I think we'll do. I'm unsure if BR elements can have style. Maybe they can actually, but I'm just going to implement them right now as if we don't care about this, as if they don't have style. They might be stylable in the spec, but right now we just want to insert a line break when we see one. So it's supposed to be called line break, layout break. Okay, so layout break takes a, I guess we'll do it this way because you really shouldn't be constructing layout break with any other backing element or corresponding element. So we'll include that, and just to be really cool, we can even overload the node function. So we'll do, I just like doing this kind of thing. Like if you know that the node function is always going to return an HTML BR element, so the node function is here, and it returns the corresponding DOM node for this layout node. And in layout node, it returns a node star, but in layout break, we know that there is always a node, so we can return a reference, and the node is always going to be a BR element, so we can return that exact type. So it's just something I like doing, just because it makes the code much more specific about what's going on, and it sort of codifies information that I have, but the compiler doesn't. Oh, and let me actually implement the is function. So this is template function. If you specialize this for a specific node type, then that allows you to do things like to. At least it should do. Oh, it's not this that I'm supposed to be converting. It's layout node. And we have to dereference it. So this is it's a special cast that's used in libHTML, which will assert that the node is of a certain type before casting it. So it's very handy. It's a pattern that I'm taking from WebKit. I don't remember who introduced it there, if it was me or someone else, but it's a pattern I really like, so here it is. And then the interesting thing that we're going to want to override in layout break is split into lines. So this is what we call during inline layout, where we get called with the containing block, and then we are expected to do whatever we need to split this layout break into line boxes and insert those line boxes as appropriate into the layout block. So let's see. Layout break, just to make sure that everything looks good here. Okay, and then let's go in layout break and define this class. Include libhtml layout break. Just start with writing these out. Layout node with amp element and the destructor as well, just does nothing. Okay, and then we have layout break split into lines. Just say block. Okay, so now let's get the definition of layout block so that we can work with it. And what we want to do is let me show you in Firefox, actually. So each of these lines here is a line box, and that's what we end up with in the Serenity browser as well. Like we end up with these on a box of its own. I mean, when we're finished, we're going to end up with these on a box of their own. And they're all within the same containing block in this case. So what we want to do is, during line layout, we get called to split into lines, and then our sibling will be called to split into lines, and so on, and we'll recursively ask everyone to split themselves into lines. So what we want to do here is, when we get told to split this layout break into lines, we just want to insert a line break instead. So we want to cut and make a new line right away. So we'll say line boxes dot append a new line box. I think that's pretty straightforward. So let's just see how that turns out. Let's just see if I have the right idea here in general of how to do this. Oh, assertion failed. The child is in line. Right. We have to say that we are in line. Otherwise, this is not going to work. So set inline true. Okay. Bloop. All right. So definitely progress. We are inserting line breaks, but in the cases where we wanted multiple line breaks, it's not happening. So I think that's because of the way that we compute the height of each line box. We compute the height of each line box by looking at the contents of the line and then just taking the tallest thing on that line. But what we do here is that we just insert an empty line box at the end of the line boxes, and that means that we might end up with completely empty line boxes, which will then not have anything tall in them, so their maximum height, the tallest item is 0 pixels, right? So you gotta do something about that. So let me show you actually how we figure out the height of a line. So that would be in layout block, layout inline children. This is the function that ends up calling split into lines. So let's see, here it is. To lay out the inline children, we remove all of our line boxes, and then we iterate over the children and call it split into lines. And this is the assertion that was failing, by the way. We assert that all of our children are inline. So then, after we've split into lines, we will iterate over all of our line boxes, and here's where we look for the tallest fragment on each line. in each line box. And since we'll have no fragments on a completely empty line, then max height will just be 0. And then max height is used to compute the y coordinate of each fragment. So when you're replacing these things, then for empty lines we end up not adding any offset. So I think an easy way to do this is to just say that there's a minimum height. So we could do something like, I guess we could just take the line height of the current style and use that as a minimum value. So that would be style dot. But well, we don't have the line height anywhere actually. What did I say here? So when we split text into lines, then we compute the line height by just taking the font glyph height and multiplying it by 1.4. So yeah, this is a fixed me indeed. And I mean, I don't really want to implement the line height property right now, but I would like to do exactly this, which makes me sad because I don't want to copy this necessarily. So what if we just had something like style.line height, and then we would allow you to get it from the style. Let's see. So we'll add a function for that here. We'll say line height. And then in style properties, line height, we'll do something like this. I don't know why I'm casting that to int. Does that make any sense? Oh, just to get rid of the warning. Alright. So now we can ask the style for the line height. And then when we actually want to implement the line height property, we can go and do it better in that place. Actually, let's move this fix me into this function. Okay, and then let's also use that here. So we'll say max height is min height. Min height is style line height. Maybe we'll call it min line height. So what am I doing here? So basically, style will go to the, we'll check what style we're applying from CSS and then query the line height. And then we'll use that as the minimum line height. So that's what we get here. These empty lines now have the minimum line height and it ends up looking just right. It's pretty nice. Very cool. Oh, very, very cool. Okay, so let me see. I kind of wanted to show you the layout tree, the way that it looks right now. And it would be nice if there was like a menu that let me just dump out a layout tree instead of me having to go in and recompiling every time I want to see the layout tree. So let me add a menu for that. I'll add a debug menu to the browser. So let's see, let's say auto debug menu. Debug. Add an action, g-action create. Dump, I don't know, like dump DOM. Well, we can add a dump DOM as well, actually. It's not gonna hurt. It will probably be very useful sooner than I imagine. So what do we have here? HTML widget dot document, and then we can just dump tree the document, star document. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and then let's add one also for dumping the layout tree. DOM tree, layout tree. Layout root. How do we get to the layout root? Layout node. Okay. Let's try this. Oh, I forgot to add it to the menu bar. Add menu, move debug menu. All right. Here's the debug menu. So now if I ask it to dump the DOM, then we get a DOM dump right here on the debugger. Very nice. And then what if I ask it to dump the layout tree? Well, look at that, it's the layout tree. Cool. So let's go here and see what the DOM looks like. This is the DOM for our little BR test. And the layout tree, roof. Oh, we can see here that these, I forgot to implement class name. That's why they look like this. So it prints the whatever the class name function returns. So let me fix that. And I fixed that by just overriding this function. So let's actually do it this way. Const char class name. Oof. Oh, damn it, I forgot to auto format, but it's not the most important thing. So we go here and layout tree, and look at that, layout break all over the place. So yeah, so here the layout block is the body element in our case, which makes sense because all of this stuff was in the body, I think, right? Yeah, these are just children of the body. So straight in the body, we just have text with BRs. And if you look here, the layout block corresponding to the body element has these line boxes. And this output here is definitely not entirely right, but that's something else I have to fix. But it looks right. So that's the important part. It's just the debug output is not right for some reason. I'll debug that later. So we see all the line boxes up here at the top, but then we can also see each individual child layout node. So we have layout text, and then a layout break, and a layout text, and then a layout break, and then another layout break, and blah, 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 blah. And when it comes to inline layout, like it's not so interesting to look at each individual thing. You can see the text here, for instance, layout text. It has no box of its own. Like it has no layout information of its own. Everything that we did with layout for this thing, we ended up putting into the line boxes up here, and this is like the canonical information about how this text is laid out, because text does not behave like a block, obviously, and neither does the BR element. Anyways, so that's what we ended up with. It's pretty cool. So let's commit some stuff. Guess we'll do. Oh, there's so much stuff here. Let's see. Let's add this one first. Let's do the line height thing first. I think that's these changes. And line height to style properties, and then using it in layout text. Yeah. Oops. HTML add style properties line height. We currently hardcode line height to 140% of the font glyph height. But since I don't want to, and this patch doesn't fix hard coding, but at least moves it out of layout text and up to style properties and into style properties, where it can be reused until the day we go and do proper implementation. CSS line height. Smiley face. Zhoof. Okay. And then let's add this thing with the wait, what the heck was that? I wanted to see a diff. Just adding the dump functions to the browser. I think that's very useful. Separate commit. So browser, add a debug menu with actions to dump DOM and layout trees. Super, super useful. I already love it, and I know that I'm going to be adding more things to that menu for sure. And then finally the BR element. So let's, I guess we can just add everything in the HTML actually. Bloop. And oh wait, hold on. What did I change in here? Well, it's okay. Let's just look at what we are committing. So patch review. First, just adding the link to the BR element test page, sure. And then here in the element factory, when we encounter the BR tag, we now produce a BR element, sure. And here's the DOM element implementation. The only thing special about it is that creating a layout node will produce a layout break rather than doing whatever the default version of create layout node would do, which is to look at the display property and produce a layout node based on that. But we always want a layout break for BR element. And then here's just the definition of, or the declaration of HTML BR element. Nothing special about that. And then in layout block, now we want to make sure that each line box, the height for each line box is minimum the current line height. I think that makes sense. I'm not entirely completely sure that it follows the spec in all cases, but I think it makes logical sense to me at this moment, so we're just going to implement it this way, and then we can come back to it if it turns out that there's some case where it shouldn't work this way. Because this is like a common sense implementation. I didn't actually look at the spec, so. And then layout break, the layout node. Let's look at the definition here. Declaration. I always mess up definition and declaration. Let's look at the declaration. So it's a straight layout node subclass, which can only be instantiated with a corresponding BR element. And the only interesting thing about it is that it can be split into lines. And of course it behaves as an inline, which means that it can participate in inline layout. Okay. And when we split a layout break into inlines, what we do is we just add a new line box to the current set of line boxes in the containing block. So it's extremely simple, but I really quite like how simple the line layout code is at the moment. I know that it's going to get more complicated over time as we implement more features, but like the simplicity of it right now, it's so like understandable. I really dig that. Okay. And yeah, I guess that's all there is to it. Wait, did I forget to add the test case? Yes, I did. Right here. Okay, so lib HTML, implement the BR element for line breaking. The BR element will produce a special layout break node in the layout tree, which forces a line forces a break in the line layout whenever it's encountered. Whenever, damn it, it's 72 characters, I can't put a dot. Whenever encountered. Aha. This patch also makes layout block use the current line height as the minimum effective height for each line box. Yeah. Okay. This ensures, let's just explain it, that having multiple BR elements in a row actually doesn't create zero height line boxes. Okay, cool. So let's see that one more time. Zoof. And let's see that, yeah, it still works if you force it to wrap a little bit. It's pretty cool. So that's the BR element implemented. Very naive version, but still works. So I hope you saw something interesting here, because this is going to be it for today's video. So thanks for hanging out, and hope you're having a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye.